Proteins, the key to cellular metabolism. Proteins, also known as polypeptides, are macromolecules, which means they're big molecules composed of lots of small molecules binding together. These smaller molecules, called peptides or amino acids, there's about 20 different amino acids. Proteins do pretty much everything in our bodies, and they either play the primary or a key role in nearly every cellular function. Proteins are A, hydrophobic molecules like fats and waxes. B, sequences of amino acids held together by peptide bonds. C, made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen and are the primary fuel source for our bodies. Or D, composed of a sugar phosphate backbone with nucleic acids in between. Stephen.
B.
B, of protein synthesis. So protein synthesis is initiated by the cell receiving a signal to make proteins, make a specific protein. When this happens, a specific segment of DNA is unwinded, and this segment of DNA contains the genetic code for the specific protein that is ordered to be made. And then a protein called RNA polymerase goes through that section and transcribes a section of messenger RNA, also known as mRNA. And after the mRNA is transcribed, it is expelled from the nucleus into the cytoplasm, where it binds to a ribosome. And each codon has a corresponding tRNA molecule with a corresponding amino acid that is brought into the ribosome by the tRNA. And then the ribosome attaches the amino acids together with a peptide bond by a dehydration reaction. And you can see if these are two amino acids, two hydrogens and an oxygen are taken away from the amino acids and replaced by a peptide bond. Enzymes are a type of protein, and they act as organic catalysts. So if any of you guys are taking chemistry right now, you know that catalysts like platinum, they don't really take part in the reaction. They just allow it to happen either at a greater rate or in conditions where it would not normally be able to happen. Enzymes do this by lowering the activation energy of a chemical reaction. This graph shows a reaction done without an enzyme and how much energy it takes to make that reaction happen. And then a reaction with an enzyme takes much less energy to perform the same reaction. To burn glucose, it usually doesn't happen at 98 degrees Fahrenheit in our bodies, but enzymes make that process happen. Enzymes are present in almost every chemical reaction just to make it happen in our cells, and they are key to cellular metabolism. A key thing to protein function is not only their composition, the sequence of amino acids, but also their shape. And this is really evident in enzymes because the whole way an enzyme works is that it is folded to have an active site, and that active site targets the molecules that you're going to either synthesize into a new compound or a compound that you're going to decompose into two compounds. So in this example, you can see that the disaccharide maltose binds to the active site, and then the enzyme breaks it up into two monosaccharides, in this case glucose. A few examples, ligase, we learned about this when we learned about DNA replication. And ligase makes phosphodiester bonds between the backbone of DNA molecules. And this is useful in connecting Okazaki fragments of the lagging strand in DNA replication. And then also, we just had a lab when we cut lambda DNA with restriction enzymes. Now, if we wanted to go further and make recombinant DNA, for example, if we had the lambda DNA that we cut and then other DNA that we cut with the same restriction enzymes, and we wanted to splice the two DNA fragments together, the sticky ends would join, and then we would use ligase to solidify the backbones of the two DNA fragments into one solid piece of DNA. Lactase breaks down another polysaccharide lactose, which is a long sugar, into glucose. And people who are lactose intolerant, they lack this enzyme, and so they have a hard time breaking down lactose into glucose, and so they can't consume dairy products. They'll get an upset stomach. DNA replication. So the first protein that acts in DNA replication is DNA helicase. And what it does is it takes double-stranded DNA and it unwinds it to be replicated, exposing the nucleotide bases on the inside. Primase, A, keeps separated DNA strands from annealing. B, connects Okazaki fragments. C, anneals an RNA primer, or D, elongates an RNA primer? Antoinette? C. Great job. So not only do proteins do a lot of very important functions on the microscopic level, they also do things on the macroscopic level that we are much more aware of. So the way we see is regulated by proteins. And the only difference between the cells that see color and light is the different proteins that are on the cellular membrane. There's a pigment called rhodospin coating the outside of rod and cone cells. And rhodopsin is composed of rhodopsin is composed of two proteins, 2-cis-retinol and scotospin. And when it's exposed to light, the 2-cis-retinol protein decomposes, and this makes activated rhodopsin. And the activated rhodopsin creates an electric current. And this is then sent through various nerves and fibers to the occipital lobe in the back of our brain, which is also known as the primary visual cortex, which is where the image is processed and we can see. Proteins are really important to our cellular function, and if they go wrong, we get sick in sickle cell anemia. So it's caused by mutation of one gene, the beta globin gene, on the short arm of chromosome 11. And it's just one nucleotide base pair change from guanine, adenine, guanine to guanine, thymine, guanine. Just one nucleotide is changed. And this results in valine being translated instead of glutamate. Regular red blood cells look like this, and they're smooth, donut-shaped, and they flow really well through our veins and arteries. But the sickle-shaped red blood cells made from the valine instead of the glutamate being in the hemoglobin look like this, and even just from the picture you can see how they might not flow through arteries nearly as well. Like I said earlier, an important thing to protein function is not only their composition but also their shape, and this is evident in mad cow disease, because mad cow disease, which is also known as bovine spongiform encephalopathy, and it causes brain cell death, is caused by prions. And prions are proteins, but the difference between prions and regular proteins is their shape. So this protein, which is a normal protein, and this prion have the same exact amino acids. If you broke them down and analyzed them, you get the same results. You would see that they're composed of the same thing. The only difference is their shape. And the way prions work is if you have two regular proteins, and then one of them goes to make a prion. When prions come and interact with regular proteins, they turn them into other prions.
So lysosomes, would they normally take them, or would they normally take them, like the prions? If they...
Well, they recognize them as foreign, and so they try and contain them, but then there's just more and more, and so they just get too full.
Do they just like contain them within like lysosome and just keep them forever, or do they like,
usually the cell encompasses them and then tries to digest them. Lysosomes are also thought of like a cell's stomach. Proteins are also known as polypeptides and are made of many peptides, which are the monomers of proteins linked together. Peptides are also known as amino acids. There's about 20 different kinds, and they're held together by peptide bonds. And amino acids are translated from DNA. More specifically, mRNA is transcribed from DNA, coding for the specific protein, and then ribosomes read the RNA codons and translate it into protein. Enzymes are types of proteins that catalyze chemical reactions. They can either form or decompose compounds, allowing for all the many chemical reactions that happen in our cells. And protein shape is just as important as protein composition. Proteins are essential to us. We use them in DNA replication. We need the correct proteins to stay healthy. We need proteins to build our bodies. Our nails and our hair and things like that are made from protein. And we would not be off very well without proteins. They're very important.